This is how we look at one of our segments, right? So this shows basically the market. This is everybody in the market and our current engagement level with that person, right? Have we ever talked to them? So as you can see in this market, we've talked to a lot of folks. There's actually a lot of people that we haven't even touched yet. So this is like how we would prioritize. And also every market's different, right? Some have a much fatter middle, some are much more top heavy. For us, our revenue potential within an account is largely dependent on like their sort of gross revenue, the number of customers they have. So we are directly correlated to the top heaviness of one of these markets. So a very top heavy market, we take a slightly different strategy towards, or like we can isolate 100 companies and go after them. Whereas the other markets with a good below 25 employees, we don't really see much value. So it's about 100 companies there. So yeah, we can adjust strategy accordingly. And then we ingest every data point we have ever had, hundreds of millions of data points over 5 years of doing business. So if we've ever had a conversation, if they've ever signed up, if there's any gong activity, any email activity whatsoever, it's all pulled in. And then we actually have AI synthesize that content, right? So it'll analyze every single gong history and it'll write a summary like, hey, with this particular customer, they trialed you 3 years ago. They ran into some issues with the product then. So if they come and knock on the door again, or we're reaching out, we have that context. It's very helpful when you're outbounding or very helpful when engaging with the customer. We also track the amount of the market we've engaged with. This helps us understand, let's say we size the market as $200 million of addressable revenue for us, right? We can quickly see how much is left in the vine essentially. And then this is an example of that deep research report I showed you, I was mentioning. So this is what we get out of a market, and this is 30 pages long. So it's a lot to get into, but this is essentially the core context. So you can get there pretty quickly by a decent prompt and asking deep research to go into a market and figure out, what's relevant here. And I shared this with a
Yeah.
couple CEOs in the market, and they're like, wow, I learned something from this. We have a pipeline where we take all of the data that we've collected about the market and actually combine it with another report that is specific to the company. So like before we go and up on a person at that company, we actually go and pull a similar 15-page plus report from deep research, well, actually Perplexity on the company. So you have
Okay.
the market context, the company context, and then the person context. And so now that's plugged in along with a prompt that says, hey, generate some content for outbound that would do X or Y. So you can play around with the prompts. They have to include some context in the value prop and the ROI. But that we've seen that like it's the content that we've been able to produce in those pipelines is significantly better because of the context. So we're in the middle of automating this a bit more. I don't have anything to show on that, but anybody who's played around with any of the agentic flows of the context that you're going to inject in one of those prompts, you can imagine how easy it is to get some value from that.